It's almost hard to put into words how badly the Timberwolves just fumbled last night's game against the Bucks. In the pantheon of bad losses this season, and Minnesota has a lot of them, that was pretty easily the very worst. With 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter of this must-win game, they led by 24 points, and somehow, when the final whistle went, they had lost this game by 7 points. And even more incredibly, it was a pretty basic 2-3 zone that completely derailed this game and put a serious dent in Minnesota's chances of getting out of the play-in and even higher up in the standings than that. And it's funny because the first time we actually saw that defensive zone in the fourth quarter was actually the only time that Minnesota played it perfectly. So you see the Bucks dropping into the zone with 2 at the top and the 3 behind that, and this time it's executed to a T. Naz Reid cuts into the soft spot in the middle of the zone. That draws Portis in as a helper, and now you've got Gobert streaking to the rim to pull in Green defensively. That means Alexander Walker can attack a closeout and bend the zone. Gobert is again occupying Giannis here, and eventually they're able to put the zone into rotation and find a wide open 3 for an elite shooter. If Minnesota was able to execute like that for even a few minutes, they would have broken this zone and won this game. Instead, we got a barrage of mistakes that ultimately cost them the game. Sometimes it was the players simply not being secure enough with the ball. Again, Naz ducks into that soft spot, and they do that so Portis has to step out onto him in there, and that leaves the front of the rim open for Gobert to roll up the mismatch for that high-low pass, and frankly Gobert needs to make the read to this shooter, or he needs to be able to go up strong and finish that himself. And what became a real theme of this collapse was not only that the zone defense was destroying Minnesota's offense, but that it was turning directly into points going the other way in transition. And again, that's just basic ball security that ruins a pretty decent possession. And to me, those are the possessions that really sting the offense. Like if they're able to hit the middle here, go inside out, force the top of the zone into rotation, swing the ball around the arc and then attack another closeout, and then force that final rotation at the rim, they've re-established the middle scorer perfectly. But whether that's a bad pass or bad hands, they butcher the advantage that they've created. And now they are trying different things here, like setting these kind of elevator door ball screens to give Ant this pathway through the defense, but if he just runs into the screener, it doesn't matter whether those screens were a good idea or not, it's an easy bucket going the other way. So that to me was the biggest problem that sunk Minnesota. Simple mistakes, things that were avoidable, coming off actions that did have a chance to work. And I think that flows into another area that ruined them, which was the inability to make the right reads against this zone. This is simple but important in a meltdown like this. I think they need Randle to actually set a real pin-in screen down here for DiVincenzo so he can curl up into a jumper, and even without it, they still need Conley to make this read quickly because that's still a shot you can live with from a Wolves perspective. Instead, they end up with an objectively worse look and another nail in their coffin. There just needed to be a sharper edge to Minnesota's offense all round. Like when Randle is operating in that soft spot, if he stays here or at around the free throw line, they're set up for Gobert to get behind the defense and for Randle to go with that high-low lob over the top. But even when Gobert gets into that position, Randle has gone away from the rim and that pass feels a little too risky now. Instead, they turn it over trying to force a secondary action, and it ends predictably on the other end of the floor. And if we're talking about making the right decisions in the flow of the offense, this possession felt particularly egregious. As usual, they're trying to get Randle into the middle of that zone, First, Ant doesn't find him there, then Conley doesn't find him out here with the obvious mismatch. So this is an offense lacking creativity, and it turns into an Ant bailout 3. And what's particularly concerning about this is that they get it back, they force the defense into rotation, and Randall seems to completely ignore one of the best shooters in the league, who's wide open one pass away, only to turn it over himself going downhill. And to top off this recipe for disaster, the Wolves fell victim to their old friend spacing. Now, much like most of their offense in this fourth quarter, this isn't a very inspiring possession, but Randall's downhill attack would have a perfect release valve option if McDaniels was a shooter in the wide open corner. Instead, McDaniels feels compelled to get into this more comfortable area for him, and you end up with this Bermuda Triangle where modern offense goes to die. Like, I think we're all watching this collapse, thinking somebody just needs to get downhill to the rim, but when Ant catches here, you've got two players jamming up the paint, and they end up just swinging it aimlessly until they decide to turn it over again. When you have guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid sitting on the bench with a fistful of made threes each, this one feels like it lands back on the coaching staff for these non-spacing lineups. Unfortunately, this was only a smattering of the possessions that sent Minnesota into a tailspin last night. All up, there were 15 straight zone possessions that the Wolves failed to score on in the final quarter of their most important game of the season, and the blame for that goes on the players and their ability to execute both the simple and the more complicated things, and the coaches for not being able to help the players break a well-executed but ultimately junk defense. With the way the West is right now, Minnesota hasn't quite dug their own grave, but this game was certainly a shovel into the dirt that could have been completely avoidable. If you enjoyed this breakdown, you can become a Howls and Growls member. Check out the pinned comment below for more details, and thanks again for watching Howls and Growls.
What we do here is go back.